Hello. What follows is a 6-part first-person recounting of the life of Tom Acker. Father Tom, at the time of this video, was 92, and the video was made in May of 2022. His life is a fascinating journey through several countries, including Nepal. Along the way, Father Tom Acker of the Society of Jesus has been president of 2 universities. He is a scientist with a doctorate in biology from Stanford University. He has been consulted by the highest levels of 2 governments. His outlook, competence, and attitude toward his tasks have earned him a lot of love and respect by many of the people who he's come in contact with. At every turn, though, from the earliest age, as you'll see, he has been the problem child for many of his superiors. When we met, he was serving as a parish priest and busy saving a failing parish school, which he then revived and caused it to blossom where it had been on its last gasp. Toward the end of these videos, he calls me his friend. I am very proud of that designation. I should mention I'm not Catholic. My work involving sound and video systems brought me into contact with hundreds of pastors and priests and some imams and rabbis. I have met some outstanding people who have taken up the work that they see God has called them to, and Father Tom is such a person. Please enjoy with me the story of Father Tom Acker of the Jesuits. So we're talking to Father Tom Acker, and we're going to begin part 3 of his story. And this is going to start at the time when Father Tom is already a priest, and he is already has a doctorate and has completed that, and he's refreshing his biology knowledge and getting ready to move on to other subjects. Well, please continue.
Well, I finished tertianship, and that finishes the time of Jesuit training, and I was assigned to John Carroll University to teach biology. And so I taught biology at John Carroll University. I always like to explore, and they had me teaching 3 classes of general biology at John Carroll. And I said, this is a waste of time. Why can't I teach that course and put all the classes together in one class? And so I said, okay, if you want to try it. So I ended up by teaching a class of about 205 people in Kulas Auditorium, biology. Had a great big overhead projector that I could go on. And then I did a laboratory. I had laboratory all day long, and I had time cards. You punched in and you punched out when you finished the laboratory. I tried the system that you had if you work at a factory, and it worked very nicely. And I had laboratory assistants that you could come in anytime you wanted to and try that. And I still remember I got a call one day from the police, and the police said, Father, we have picked up a man that we think was involved in a hit-run accident, and he said he couldn't have been in that hit-run accident. He was in your lab at that time. Can you verify whether he was in your lab at that time? And I said, just a minute, officer, let me go to some cards. I pulled out his card, and there's his card, and he was in that lab at that time. And I said, he was in that lab at 9:53. He said, oh, Father, how would you know that? I told him how I did it. And he said, oh my gosh, he's got the perfect alibi. So he got off. So that was one thing. The other thing I had then also, I had a pet blue jay. My nephew had given me a baby blue jay, and I got this pet blue jay. I called the blue jay whisper. Steve, did you ever hear a blue jay whisper?
No.
They don't. They cry out.
So it was a name like you'd call a very large person tiny.
That's it. Blue whisper. And I kept it in a cage, but I let it out. It'd fly outdoors. It got written up in the newspapers, and the wildlife people came to see me one morning while the blue jay was still in the cage, and they said, "Father, you can't have that blue jay in the cage. It's not illegal." I said, "Oh, no problem." I opened the cage, popped out on my shoulder, I fed it, opened the window, and oh my gosh. I said, "You'll be back tonight." It comes back every night. And the blue jay also, I had a girl who worked with me there, feeding my insects out of the Connie Smeda. She taught it how to wolf whistle. You know what a wolf whistle is?
Yes.
Can you wolf whistle for me?
No. I didn't like that.
To learn wolf whistle. And Father Shell, who was the dean, was outdoors one day, and the blue jay was out there, and 3 of the co-eds were walking alongside of him, before him, and the blue jay started a wolf whistle. And whistle. But by the 3rd time, they finally looked around, and he said, "Girls, it's not me. It's the blue jay up in the tree." And he was so upset that he called me and said, "You've got to get rid of that blue jay. It's causing me a problem." But I taught there for 2 years at John Carroll, and then they decided to move me to the University of Detroit. So I went up to the biology department at the University of Detroit then to teach biology there. I had another course there, a large course called Overpopulation and Pollution. Almost reflected my major professor at Stanford, Paul Ehrlich, on overpopulation. Big class, another couple hundred in the class. I enjoyed teaching big classes. It was very useful. I also taught some graduate courses in invertebrate entomology, or all entomology is invertebrate. But while I was there, I also took a trip down to the Tarahumara Indians in Creole, Mexico, with Dr. Dan Snively, who was a medical doctor. And we went down there and we met the Tarahumara Indians, worked at the clinic there for a little bit in one summer. And I said, "You know what? I've got to go overseas. I've got to see what this is like." So I applied for a Fulbright grant to Kathmandu, Nepal, and I got a grant, a Fulbright grant to go to Kathmandu, Nepal. Wow. I was to teach ecology there, and that was really, I had been writing grants before. I wrote grants when I was at Stanford, wrote grants at John Carroll, and got grants from government, but this was the first one that I really found interesting. So I was to leave to go to Kathmandu, Nepal. Wow, what a country, what a country. And so I went there in, gosh, what year would that be? 1972, I believe, I was there. Flew in there at the height of the monsoon, or about the time the monsoon was going to be, and there I started to teach ecology to Nepalese. If you ask me what are the most important times in your life, I would probably tell you not ordination. The most transforming work in my life was going to Stanford. Changed my whole life. Just meeting those people, different people. And then going to Nepal. There I met Hindus and Buddhists and Mohammedans, and I was in a place where I was a minority. Although I taught in English, most of the work was done in Nepalese, and I was a lousy linguist. But I wasn't there very long, and I got to know Surya Bahadur Shakya, who was the equivalently a vice president of studies. And the king had just decided they want to do a new education plan. And the new education plan had to have three characteristics to it. It had to be practical, fitted into Nepal, and be practical, fitted to Nepal, and I forget the third one. And Surya Bhatta Shakya said, I want you to change the biology education for the entire country. I want you to do that for your Fulbright. And so he associated me with Divya Bhatta, who was a botanist. And so our job then was to change the biology education for the country, put through a whole new curriculum, teach the people how to use the curriculum for the country of Nepal. And it put me in contact with the highest levels of scientific education there in Nepal. Surya Bhatta Shakya later became the vice chancellor. Who was the chancellor? The chancellor is the king. He's the vice chancellor. But he put me in charge. I got to know many other, Shankar Prasad Pradhan, who was the dean of engineering, and so on and so forth, and Divya Bhatta. So we went all over the entire country. Going over the country was not easy. You trekked, you walked. And so we walked again and again and again. Sometimes, and then I took other walks, 6 and 7 day hikes up in the mountains, carrying your food with a porter and so on. I was fortunate to go up to the base camp of Mount Everest. That's about 18,000 feet. It changed my whole life working in Nepal. What wonderful, wonderful people they were. Buddhists, Hindus, Mohammedans, and I couldn't function as a priest. I wasn't allowed to function as a priest. I could say Mass privately.
Did you encounter other Christians as well?
Yes. The Jesuits were there. The Jesuits had been there before, but I wasn't allowed to live with them. I lived by myself in a house, an apartment given to me by the Fulbright. But no one knew I was a priest, except Surya Bhatta Shakya. He said, oh, we know who you are, but you cannot function as a priest publicly. We don't care about the rest. By the way, I had access to the commissary. I had access to their liquor. And so these guys, Surya Bhatta Shakya, Shankar Prasad Pradhan, Divya Bhatta, used to come over to my place with their drivers, and we'd sit there and we knock off bottles of scotch. But I became very friendly with these guys. They are tremendous people.
So how long in total were you in Nepal?
I was in Nepal for 1 year, and then they called me back to spend another year, another half year with them, and also with the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps caught me then and said, would you train up some Peace Corps volunteers how to do Peace Corps work in Nepal? So we trained a science section doing there. Also met another young lady there. She was a Peace Corps volunteer. Barbara, her name was Barbara. Barbara Haven. And I used to go over and talk to her, and she wonderful. She would find out things to do. She was a typical librarian. She said, you know, there's a big thing going on here in Nepal. I can't get there. You got a Jeep. You can get there. Can we go together? And so we went together. And so I was traveling with, she'd find these marvelous places to go to. There'd be an event taking place. I had the Jeep, and she could travel with another man. And she knew French, by the way. And the French embassy was right close by, the cultural affairs. We used to go and watch French movies together. But you meet, and the people are very friendly. There wasn't any type of terrorism there at that time. And so we were working in agriculture. They were working on setting up water supplies for them. They were teaching them, this was a math science thing they were teaching. I found the Peace Corps volunteers were them because they got to use them because they got to use the commissary. Not they couldn't use the commissary. They could use the tennis courts and stuff like that. We used to play baseball together, softball really. I was the old man of the group. I know I became very proud because when I told them I'd like to play softball with them, oh, okay, you could be out in right field. Pretty soon I graduated playing shortstop, which is the best place to play. I found the Peace Corps volunteers very, very nice. I could hardly, I hated to leave them, but it was a very worthwhile thing. And after I came back to the Peace Corps, then I went back to University of Detroit. After this, basically a year and a half, well, first a year and then another half year, a little more than a half year, maybe a year and 3/4 with the Peace Corps, and then finishing up some work on the Fulbright. So it was really worthwhile.
So this would be a good place to stop with this part, and we'll begin from here when you return to the United States.
Okay.